Unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time. So the other day when somebody commented on my Rob Reiner YouTube that I should watch the Rob Reiner roast from the year 2000, I thought, you know what? I should. And I did. And I have some opinions about it. Are you surprised? Very surprising for me to have an opinion about something. And look, I don't necessarily want to keep talking about Rob Reiner for the rest of my life. But right now it's populating all my feeds. And it's interesting. I mean, let's just admit it. It's a biblical kind of story. When you look at the rivalry, if you could call it that, I don't think you really can, between Donald Trump and Reiner, or just Rob Reiner and common Americans. You know, Rob Reiner versus the Archie Bunkers of the world, good, normal, solid people. You know, it's a left versus right thing, and to have Donald Trump have his children all love him and have Rob Reiner's child kill him, there's a level of poetic justice there that is just, even if you're a lefty, if you love him, how could you deny it? If I'm a lefty and I love him and I hate Donald Trump, it's one of those moments where I go, fuck, damn it, God damn it. How did Trump come out on top of this one? I guess I'd just yell at him for being mean to Rob. It's insane. But anyway, so I watched the roast, and first of all, I've always found roasting to be kind of, I don't know, it's not my favorite kind of comedy. I watch Kill Tony every week. I have a love-hate relationship with Tony Hinchcliffe. I mostly hate him. I'm glad he hosts a show, but most of the time I'm watching the show, I'm thinking, would you please shut the fuck up for 2 seconds, Tony? Asking a question of your guest doesn't take, he'll take 10 minutes to ask a question that takes 10 seconds to answer. You know, like he's trying to lead the witness. He thinks he has to conduct every bit of it. Anyway, but there's a really just a caustic kind of a thing. And the thing about roasting, anyway, it only really works if you're telling the truth, right? It doesn't really work if you're just making up something. If you got a skinny guy standing there and you roast him by saying, you look like a bear. People go, what? What are you fucking talking about? He's skinny. He looks like a broom. He looks like a stick man, not a bear. There has to be truth in it for it to be funny, right? And when there's camaraderie between two people, that kind of taking the piss out can be seen as you could, if you want to, you could say, well, they're bonding with each other and they're identifying, this is all the ways that it's visible that you suck. But beyond all these things, beyond your stupid nose, beyond your stench, beyond whatever, your lisp, I still love you. You're still my friend. We're still going to have drinks. So that could be the positive spin about that. But of course, that's a very narrow usage of the roast, because most of the time you're roasting somebody, you don't know anything about them. Nothing. And so when you bring up the truth or the criticism, it can just be mean. It's just mean because there's no promise to have drinks afterwards. Or you might not like the guy. You probably don't like the guy. So roasting somebody, putting that setting, just creates an environment where it's okay to be a total fucking jerk. Oh, it's just funny. I'm just telling a joke. Oh, well, why'd you get your feelings hurt? Oh, because you made fun of the fact that my mom died of cancer 2 weeks ago. And I get it. I'm not supposed to take life too seriously. We always should laugh. But you don't know me. You know? Anyway, I don't know about the value of just being mean to strangers and saying things and pretending like they're all meant in good humor. Oh, I'm just having fun. Are you really? Because, when I'm joking, I know this because this is me projecting perhaps. But for me personally, a lot of the times I'm joking and teasing somebody, I'm actually getting out some aggression. I'm saying something to them that I want them, I'm giving them information that I would like them to know. I'm telling them something that annoys me about them. And well, maybe that's why people don't think I'm very funny. And it's probably why I don't have any friends. I'm a very flawed person. Nobody should be like me, ever. But I see that in others too. That's the thing. If I thought this would be just exclusive to me, in fact, when I watch Kill Tony, I often think about, and I've gone to it a couple times live in LA, and signed up and thought I have I've got a thing in my, this is an embarrassing thing about me, but I've got a note in my notes folder that's just jokes that I write down, things that I think are funny. It's full. It's got years worth of them. I write them down kind of in shorthand when I'm thinking about something funny, and I think, oh, that'd be funny for a skit. That'd be fun. If I ever do stand-up again, I'm going to do this one. And then I'll write it down, and as soon as I write down a new idea for a joke, I look past in my old jokes, and they're kind of written in a shorthand in a cryptic way, as if I'm so lazy, I don't write out the whole joke. I just write down a few key words as if that's going to remind me of the joke. And it doesn't. I look at it and I go, what the fuck? I don't know what this is about. What was that? Probably something that wasn't very funny. But anyway, so I look up the Comedy Central roast. It's a Friars Club, and they have on the dais, I don't even know what the word dais means, but how about just a long table that gets longer and longer as the things get more popular? Then they add other rows of tables. And these are people that just come to roast this celebrity. And the first thing that strikes me is, in this particular one, it's at least 80% Jews. Alan King, it's 2000, so all these guys are dead. Abe Vigoda, Richard Dreyfuss, Billy Crystal, who else? Just Jew after Jew after Jew. And then they had, weirdly, Michael Spinks, the boxer, the brother or son of Leon Spinks, whose picture I hung up in my locker in junior high just because I wanted to rebel. Everybody else liked Muhammad Ali, so I thought, I'm going to hang up Leon Spinks, the underdog. But he was there, Vanilla Ice. So, and Rhett Butler. There were like 3 Goyim there. And it was almost like, we got to have the Goyim come here. Maybe they got sued. Anyway, it's just this celebration of Jews being Jews. And it's a circle jerk. It's a Jewish circle jerk. It really is. And back then, I wouldn't have noticed that. I was just like, because it's only been recently that I figured out that Jews don't consider themselves to be white people. I was slow to the party. I've always just thought Jews and white people are the same. We're all white people. Look at us. We look white, right? But they don't see it that way. And since I learned that, I don't see it that way anymore. Now that they've identified themselves as a tribe that is definitely not like mine, I don't see it that way anymore. So I watched this thing, and you should watch it too. It's not that great, but Billy Crystal, one of the closest guys to Rob Reiner, makes all these pedophile jokes. He sleeps with his kids, and his dad slept with him. I get it. Pedophile jokes, they're very popular now, but in 2000? That predates the pedophile jokes by quite a bit, in my estimation. Pedophile jokes started getting really popular in about, 2000, I feel like 2016 or 17. That's when all of a sudden every joke had to be about abortion or pedophilia. Like I was going to open mics, and I would leave early every time. I always think I'm going to go do some open mic shit, but I'd get there and I'd get so depressed by the comedians and especially here in San Francisco, it's just abortion, 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 pedophilia, pedophilia, pedophilia. Just shock, 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 you know? And again, I'm reading the truth behind the line, between the lines. I'm going, yeah, but you have had 25 abortions. Yeah, but you probably have been affected by pedophilia, land of the misfit toys, blah, blah, blah. So I would just get depressed and I'd go home earlier without doing my jokes because, I don't know, it's just, there's very few things more sad than jokes that don't make you laugh. I don't know what it is, but there's nothing better than jokes that make you do laugh. But the jokes that make you sad, who needs that? That's the worst. That's like going to take a drink of your milkshake and discovering it's poop. The expectations leads to the pain. Anyway, so this is what I'm watching. And then somebody else got up. Billy Crystal did, and then who else? Jeff Ross, another Jew, got up and I think alluded to that. And there are a number of allusions to that. And maybe it's because Rob Reiner has a foundation or had one that was the Hope for Children. And by the way, she doth protest too much. That kind of thing when people go out of their way to, on one hand, he's calling every breeding Christian evil. That's his shtick. Every right-wing breeding family person, he's accusing them of racism and sexism. And on the other hand, he sets up a Children Are Awesome foundation. And his best friend is calling him a pedophile. Or somebody that worked for him that probably had to take direction from him. I don't know. I feel like most people I don't like taking direction at all. People try to tell me what to do. If they try to even suggest I do anything, I'm like, yeah, fuck you. How about that? How about I'll run my life, you run your life? I'm insubordinate even on a personal level where I'm my own boss. I'm insubordinate to myself. That's how bad it is. So you got to take that into consideration when Billy Crystal's up there. It's like, little jab, little jab, little jab, little jab. I saw something. I know something about your family. Let's say, even from my first example, when you take it in its best case scenario with a roast, where you're telling your friend, yeah, you suck, and here's all the reasons, but I still love you, and I still want to have a drink with you. Using that way of looking at things, and you place that on that, and you still, oh, jab, why did you call your friend a pedophile? Out of all the things you could have said about him, you picked snuggling up with his kid. And of course, now we have the benefit of hindsight where his kid murdered him, At that time, his kid would have been 7 years old, at the time Billy Crystal's. By the way, that's what I mean. When I watch Kill Tony, when I watch these, and, Austin and Kill Tony, they're supposed to be this, hey, at least people can be honest, and now the conservatives are the only people that dare to tell jokes. I have to admit that I kind of wrestle with that a little bit, because I watch it and I go, okay, yeah, the comedians are coming around. They're a little bit more conservative. Tony voted for Donald Trump. He stumped for Trump. Brian Redband didn't, but he did. Tony did. William Montgomery, he did too. David Lucas also. So you think, okay, that's cool. But then to have them doing pedophile jokes about people's children, I just think when I watch that, I just go, yeah, I don't know. There are a million things to joke about. There really are. And I'm not the joke police. In fact, I never want people to stop telling the jokes that they want to tell, because to me, jokes are revealing. This is why I don't like censorship at all. I would rather people be totally free to say what they really think, because that helps me navigate the sea of people. I can see who to avoid. If people just shut up and they stop saying what they think, you might think of people being, that person looks like they might be kind of cool, kind of nice, because they keep their yap shut. You don't know anything about them. I see the world very differently now, post 2020. Before 2020, I used to think everybody's got something to offer. Any person you meet has some information that you don't have, some helpful information. All you got to do is unlock them, and you find what's interesting about that person, and you can learn something about that person. Well, 2020 came along, and everybody was afraid of the air and started policing each other like they were Nazis. Wear your mask, you're killing grandma, blah, blah. And I was just like, fuck, I hate these people. I don't see people like that anymore. I don't see people as potential vessels of wisdom. I see most of them as total fucking idiots that do what the TV tells them to. Anyway, I digress. So this is what I watch with the roast, but it goes deeper than that, because I was thinking, God, I was just looking at this panel, and even the idea that these people would get together in a room to roast each other. I'm looking at this dais of entertainers. These are people who do absolutely nothing for humanity but make us laugh or whatever. And that's great. I'm not saying that's not a big deal. It is a big deal. But there is no industry in the world that creates such a circle jerk. The award shows. This is just another award show, by the way. This is a Rob Reiner award show. It's there to reward Rob, and it's there to reward all of his friends. Oh, and by the way, one of the guys was saying, who was it that was saying? I think it was also Billy Crystal. Was saying, by the way, Rob, where are all your friends? How come your dad's not here? Where's, I don't know, that girl from, like, most of the people from his movies were missing. Like, what the fuck is Vanilla Ice doing there? And Michael Spinks and Rhett Butler. They haven't been in his movies. Why aren't the people that are in his movies, why aren't they there? And Billy was bothering him about that. But that's a real kind of moment, like, why aren't they there? What do they know? Why didn't they show up for the roast? I don't know. But anyway, but it's a red carpet thing. Everybody puts on their tie and they show off. Look at us, we're the entertainers. And then I started thinking, what is the Friars Club? I don't know what the Friars Club is. And I got on with Grok, and one of the most unreliable researchers, but still, it's something. I said, who started the Friars Club? It started about 1904 by a bunch of dudes, vaudevillians and whatever. And I said, were they Jewish? Yeah, mostly Jewish. I started thinking, okay, 1904, bunch of Jews getting together. It was mostly a drinking and socializing club, and where they could get away after hours. It's all dudes. And I'm thinking, the first thing I think is communists. That's what I think. The Friars Club, Jews getting together in New York. So I asked Grok, and I say, was it a communist thing? No, not at all. Mostly just a drinking club. Mostly. I said, I didn't ask you what it was mostly. I said, was it a communist club or not? Well, some of them had memberships in communists. What do you mean some? So just some of the guys are communists, and the other guys, are you saying that the right-wingers, Jews, were meeting with the communists, and they're all just drinking and yucking it up? And I start asking the questions, were there any conservatives in that group? Anyway, it's kind of hard to get this data out, but you have to kind of guide Grok to give you the answers you want. And you can't rely on it because whatever. And this is, by the way, this is one of the things I kind of like about AI being a confirmation bias thing, is it just kind of reflects what all media has always been. Any book that's ever published is published from somebody's point of view, and it's mostly all lies. Even if they try as hard as they can to tell the truth and say reality, they've only got one little perspective of it, and they've chosen to tell it, knowing that there are other perspectives that they're not choosing to tell. You know, no matter what you're doing, no matter how hard you try to report the truth and reality, you can't do it. You can't. And if you're out there looking for answers, you only have so much time. You can't look at it from every point of view. And ultimately, you're probably going to pick one. And whether or not it's realistic or not is dependent on you. But anyway, the conversation keeps going. And I hadn't in this chat, usually when I start a Grok chat, I tell Grok, you're not to lecture me, you're not to give spin, you're not to opine, you're not to try to be a buddy, you're not, you're just supposed to fetch data and return it. That's it. But I don't always do that. Sometimes I forget to do that. It works pretty well if you do that and keep reminding it. Otherwise, you just get a total regurgitation of mainstream things, because that's how these chat engines work. They're word predictors. They look at all the data sets and they go, what's the most popular answer? And since the mainstream is the mainstream, it goes for the top answers first, unless you tell it not to, to find some different, more obscure shit, and we'll do that too. But anyway, so ultimately I have to go, look, how many of the people were blacklisted? How many people from the Friars Club were blacklisted by McCarthy? And then it gave me a whole list of people that were blacklisted. I said, see, so they were accused of communism. Okay, yes, and these people admitted to being communists and blah, blah, blah. And then it tried to diminish it. They were young, blah, blah, blah. And I go, look, no. I was young. I was never a communist. I never met in subversive underground communist places plotting to overthrow the United States of America and so you can't just pass it off as being young. A lot of young people have morals and they figure shit out. So anyway, I was right. That's the point. I was right. And they said, and even then Grok was trying to diminish that. How bad it was that they're blacklisted. See, I'm one of these people that I figured out in my adult years that Joe McCarthy was probably right. And he probably should have been given more money and more resources. Had Joe McCarthy's claims and suspicions been treated fairly, we might have a lot less of this not communist Hollywood nonsense now. But somehow they were able to win it. They were able to spin Joe McCarthy as the villain. They have spun it. The Jewish media, Hollywood and everything, they've turned McCarthy into the bad guy. And most people, just because of the context, they hear the name Joe McCarthy and they go, oh, the blacklisting, the terrible victims of blacklisting. It's like, no, it's the consequence of being a fucking subversive communist and meeting in the Friars Club. But anyway, so at one point, Grok was like, most of them became television writers and sitcom writers. They weren't really that subversive. And I go, yeah, but do you understand that becoming the TV writers is exactly how subversion works? Do you realize that All in the Family was intended as communist propaganda? When Norman Lear and Rob Reiner and his Jewish friends got together to make it, the point of All in the Family was to mock American values. That's the reason why they did that. They had no idea that the world was going to love Archie Bunker. They didn't know that. They set him up to be the foil, the dummy. Even Carol O'Connor tried to play it that way. They were surprised. I've seen not a lot, but I've seen documentaries and interviews about the phenomenon of Archie Bunker becoming the hero of All in the Family, much to the dismay of Norman Lear and Rob Reiner and the gang, and the subversive Friars Club communist gang that were really trying to, and still are trying to, disparage core, basic Midwestern flyover state American values. White values, let's just put it that way. White values. They're not even necessarily American. The way I see it, it goes back to Nordic, Germanic, pre-Christian Viking shit. You can get into that on some of my other recordings, but that was the point. That subversive thing was the point. So when you wrap all of that together, knowing what you know now, all that effort, from the Friars Club all the way to his roast of this communist underground of people, I mean, the effort is insane. If you think about the effort that it takes in Hollywood, and this is, again, one of those things where I just have to upset my fellow artist friends, and I just think, do you realize how utterly gross it is, how many award shows and roasts there are for the entertainment industry? It's above all other industries. They have more glaring, huge circle jerks. They don't do anything. They get together and they pretend. They meet in dark rooms like the Friars Club, plot and scheme. Whether you're when you're making art, you're making a product to manipulate somebody. That's what art is. Art is manipulation. Whether you're drawing a picture, whether you're writing a poem, whether you're making a song, whether you're doing a dance, the point is to grab somebody's attention, captivate their imagination, and make them feel something. And I have my reservations as whether or not that's ever good. Face to face even. If you get dramatic and instead of just addressing, imagine if you're trying to have a conversation about a breakup, and instead of just communicating the way you break out in a dance and you start singing. Kind of a power move. Like, really, I'm trying to break up with you in the car, and now you're dancing around on the hood, singing in the rain. Maybe calm down, So even on a personal level, it's still powerful, weird, going to church, going off to war, singing a war chant. It's obviously intended to change your mind. The war chant is to get you psyched so that you can face death, face your enemy. A church, to be reverent, something to bring people together, to create harmony, literally, to create some kind of magic. It's powerful. Art is powerful, okay? It is magic. It's fair for people to call it black magic because it can be used that way. And maybe most of the time it is. Maybe most of the time when somebody puts their pen to paper or picks up a microphone or gets out the piano, they are just trying to manipulate for their own ends. That's been my experience. Very few of the artists that I meet and I've known in my life are actively trying to make the world a better place for everybody, or for their family. It's mostly for them. Attention, power, award shows, award show after award show after award show. Even just the spectacle of filling a stadium, going on tour, the lights, the everything, just the the amount of time that goes into artists to manipulate people. You don't see that. You don't see award shows for plumbers or masons or electricians. You might have a newsletter that says the best plumber of the year is, Frank Davies from Cleveland. And he gets his little picture there. And he gets a free pipe fitting in the mail. Here you go. Here's your golden plunger, Frank. Oh, thanks, guys. These are the people that build the world. The people that actually make great stuff. The cars, the machines, have you seen pest control awards? No. Fireproofing awards, Fireman of the Year award. Again, you get the newsletter. Here you go. Here's your golden nozzle. Here's your golden hydrant. Make sure your dog doesn't pee on it. But no, the Hollywood manipulators. And to me, it is, again, it's kind of like the joke where you say something mean and you just say it's funny. It's also a confession through projection. I think that most artists, whether they know it or not, like consciously know it, they know they're getting away with something. They know they're getting paid over and over and over again for a movie that took them a week to make, and it was fun making it, but making $1 million for it. They know it's wrong. They know there's something creepy about it. The taco guy, he doesn't get paid over and over again. The guy that invented the toilet doesn't get paid every time you flush the toilet. But for whatever, if somebody makes a cool song or a cool movie, they get paid over and over and over. And they get celebrated over and over again. And it's not just because the world is celebrating them. They're doing it. They're giving themselves awards, the Academy. It's them giving awards to themselves, putting ties on, sitting in a room with themselves and making themselves look like gods. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, society goes along with it. They say, okay, I don't think they really do, though. This is the good news. I look at it from a little bit of a guilty insider's point of view because I pursued that end of life, that road of art, influence, manipulation, being cool, being above it all, being intellectual, So I've seen it from that point of view. And the good news is that I think most of the world, the guys are building trucks and pulling people out of the mud and building buildings, they have their favorite funny movies and their clips, but they don't give a shit about the Oscars. That's the good news. The good news is it is not everybody that is worshiping celebrity. And the good thing about social media is we're finding out that most people also don't give a fuck. Like, you're telling me who to vote for? Go fuck yourself, you stupid fucking prancing around. Go pretend to be a mechanic in your movie. You little soft hand faggot. Go prance around and pretend like you're us. Go do the Village People. Pretend to be a cop. Pretend to be a construction worker in your leather chaps. We got work to do. We're doing shit. I tell people, whenever they get full of themselves, and, close behind Hollywood are the sciences, the Nobel Prize and, the academics, all the people who have no accountability, all of these careers that are accountability free, where you can just say whatever the fuck you want. And if somebody doesn't get it or doesn't like it, they just, well, you're just not smart enough to get it. It went over your head, man. You dumb, uneducated plumber. By the way, my toilet's backed up. Can you come over? These fucking useless people can't even unclog their own. They can't change a light bulb without calling somebody they hate. Somebody beneath them to come fix it. an Archie Bunker. They got to call an Archie Bunker. But yeah, the self-congratulatory. It's just all coming again. I just want to say, I feel like God is smacking us all over the head, saying, look, look, look. Can you see? Can you see? Can you see? And by the way, there was another comment that was like, hey, man, sometimes people just go nuts. You can't blame it all on Rob. Sometimes kids just are wired wrong. I'm not making fun of whoever commented that. I make a dumb voice even when I impersonate myself. But you can't blame them, man. Sometimes people just go nuts. So I started thinking about that. Well, how many people are murdered by their children every year? The data sounds pretty crazy. It's about 200 people die in America at the hands of their children every year. Okay? Sounds like a lot until you realize that about 17,000 people are murdered every year in the United States. So 200 out of 17,000 isn't that much. And it's a 1 in a million shot. It's very rare. But taken by itself, 200 seems like a lot, you know? And I started thinking, you know, because now you're seeing these stories come along that Nick Reiner was schizophrenic and on different medications and blah, blah, blah. They're trying to, you know, say it wasn't his fault or whatever. And maybe I'm making that case too, because I'm saying it's Rob and Michelle's fault, kind of, for raising him in Hollywood and raising him with the values, the hate, the upside down, inverted reality of, you know, patting yourself on the back for manipulating people and playing pretend on stage rather than handing out awards to plumbers, you know? And a guy that sold the most cars, or a guy who built the most cars, the mechanic, the local mechanic, the local electrician. Where's their awards? The guy that plows the snow, the tow truck drivers, the firemen. Firemen get too much attention, actually. They get a lot. Unfairly. Whenever I hear somebody's going to be a fireman, I'm going, okay. Hero complex. You know, the real heroes are the fucking plumbers, all right? The garbage men. The guy that runs a scrap yard. Those guys, but no award shows for them. And Rob Reiner was part of it. I mean, when somebody, I know they roasted Donald Trump. I don't like everything about Donald Trump, you know. People that do good or often have lots of bad things. That's true with anybody. Nobody's all good, nobody's all bad. But hopefully you nudge things in the right direction, you know. You nudge towards good, and that usually does enough. But yeah, that whole idea of just that self-congratulatory Hollywood, you know, even accepting the invitation to be roasted, you know, there's a certain level of narcissism in that. Yeah, I'll show up. I always kind of respected that Woody Allen never showed up to pick up a trophy, you know? But there are people that say he got more attention for not showing up than if he had. You know, I'm not trying to say don't be grateful. I don't know. It's just, there's something just so sick about it all. And in light of the fact that Rob Reiner and his wife were hacked to death, had their throats slit by their own son, who was the butt of the joke in that roast. He was the butt of the joke, by the way. Not Rob Reiner. You know, when Billy Crystal was saying a joke about Rob Reiner sleeping with his kids, fucking his kids, that's what he was implying, clearly. You know? Nick's got to grow up with that. He's 7 years old. I saw your dad on the roast. Does he sleep with you? Nice job, Billy. Did you think for 2 seconds that might not be good for Nick? You know? Rob, did you think for 2 seconds that maybe you getting around in a room and getting jerked off by all your friends might not be the greatest way to raise Romy, Nick, and whatever the other kid's name is. Did you think of that? Of course you did. Of course you did, Rob. Of course you did. You put lots of thought into it. You had meetings with the Obamas. You had meetings with all your lefty friends about how to destroy white families, conservatism, religious families, Christian families. I don't even want to say the word Christian. White families, non-Jewish families. You put your whole career into it. You don't think that poison, that poisonous circle jerk, you don't think that's going to bleed over to your kid? So yeah, I don't want to just repeat my other recordings. I wanted this one to be just about this overall sickness of the award ceremony, of that whole system that just keeps congratulating that cancer. It's like, hi, we're cancer, but instead of admitting that, we're just going to roll out the red carpet. And again, this is partly where I think we as Americans should take partial responsibility for this. We do tune in. And we do congratulate them. We pay them. You know? So many good-hearted conservatives right now are taking the high road once again. Don't talk bad about our fallen enemy. Don't talk bad about the guy who tried to destroy us for years. Don't do it. We don't want to be like them. We need to properly eulogize an evil monster. Don't be like them. Satan made some great albums in the 70s. At least give him the courtesy of letting him teach our kids that they should slice off their dicks. That's the least we can do. Have you heard the music he made? Have you heard his third album? It was fantastic. Don't be mean to Satan. He's a great guitar player. He made some cool movies. Haven't you seen Spinal Tap? It's my favorite movie. Yeah, so it's up to us to not have a sick society. It's up to us to start turning our attention away. And I think this is happening, by the way. I think it's happening. I know it's happened with me. I don't watch the Oscars. I don't watch celebrities at all anymore. I literally do. When I watch YouTube, I watch people building guitars, pulling people out of the mud, rehabbing houses, fixing cars, building custom cars, cutting them up, welding them back together. So in my personal life, my awards are going towards the good people now. They're not going towards the fucking artists. They're not going towards the guys that are they're not going any longer to the manipulators. The people who are using the magic of music and the magic of moving pictures and the magic of to make you think a certain way or feel a certain feeling. I've done it. I still do it. I'm going to probably continue doing it because I'm compelled to do it. And I've had conversations with other people about this. And some people seem to think, they go, look, if you don't do it, you're just leaving a vacuum for them to do it. It exists. The Lord has allowed media to exist. So if we don't charge into it and become part of the media, we leave all the magic to them, and that's wrong too. And I think that's a solid argument. My friend Kai said that. Guy I never met. Chinese guy. Conservative Chinese guy. And I'd thought about that before. It wasn't, but it's good to hear it from another person, But still, again, accountability. Accountability is important. It's very important, and I don't know how to create accountability with media like this. I think accountability is very important, but the problem is when you release media, a book or whatever, it just goes out there and people are affected by it one way or another, good or for bad. You can't hold somebody's hand through it. You're not there to suffer the effects if they misinterpret it or they make a decision based on it that fucks up their life or something. Anyway, that's another tangent. I think we have potential for a really good world, but the battle is raging. Not to sound like some fucking preacher, but you know, you can take the boy out of Utah, but you can't take the Utah out of the boy. So that's me. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Unnecessary outro song to totally waste more